From the land of 10,000 lakes and just as many heartaches, welcome to the 301 Show. We're here to celebrate, commiserate, and maybe, just maybe, see a Minnesota team win it all. Whether you're dreaming of a Vikings Super Bowl, reliving the glory days of the Twins, or still recovering from the Timberwolves roller coaster, we've got you covered. This is the 301 Show, where the North remembers and the passion never fades.
Yes, welcome into the 301 show here. Today we've got a full slate of items to talk about as the um, Wild finish up their 7-game road trip. The Vikings played the Rams about a week ago. They got another big game this weekend against the Indianapolis Colts. The Timberwolves the Timberwolves completed their first full week of the season and surprise retirement out of Target Field here today. So we will dive into all of that plus more here on the 301 show. All right, let's start with that retirement over at Target Field. And today it was announced that Twins first baseman slash outfielder Alex Kirilloff is retiring after 9 seasons of professional baseball. He is currently 26 years old. And the reason he gave for retiring was due to injuries. He has been pretty banged up the last couple years and just throughout his entire career. And he decided that the toil of trying to get back to playing shape after his bad back the last couple years is just not worth it anymore. He is married and um, wants to just spend more time with his family. So um, for those of you that don't know, 2023 was his best season in the major leagues. He played 88 of the 162 games, so over half the year. He hit 270 average, got on base 30 or excuse me, his on base percentage was 348. His slugging percentage was 445, and his on base plus slugging was 793. That year he had 14 doubles, 11 home runs, 41 RBIs, and he got walked 28 times. So this was a guy that really was one of those pieces that helped the Twins a lot that 2023 year when with the win in the division, making the playoffs and winning the first playoff game and playoff series for the first time since was that 2004, 2002, something like that, back the 18 years that took place. And the 18 game losing streak that they had going, Kirilloff was one of those kind of cornerstone pieces of that team. And I don't know if he actually will, but if Kirilloff hears this clip or this show at all, um, do thank you for your service to the Twins. And good luck with whatever else you are doing post baseball. So that is the big news out of the Twins this week. We can go over to predictions here. Didn't have anything come off the board again this week for the Twins. But we do have 3 new predictions to go on the board for the Twins this week. The first prediction is Alex Kirilloff is going to throw out the first pitch at a regular season or postseason game at Target Field this year. Carlos Correa will play 120 or more games. Royce Lewis plays 100 plus games. And Buxton plays 80 plus. All 3 of those things have to happen for that one prediction to come true. So Correa 120 plus, Lewis 100 plus, and Buxton 80 plus. And then the Twins will win 5 or more playoff games this upcoming season. Those are my 3 predictions for this week for the Twins, the Target Field Talkers. And let us move on to the next one. All right, let's change things up this week and not do our Nordic Report last. So let's do the Nordic Report now. Looking back at this Rams game, I do want to say first and foremost, the missed face mask call on Darnold at the end of the game was brutal. That was very clearly a missed call by the referees. They had, like, I think 3 referees staring directly at it, 2 for sure in the back of the end zone. But that is not the reason the Vikings lost that game. There are 4 other reasons I saw that the were led to the Vikings losing that game. First and foremost, the Darrisaw injury. That, when your best offensive lineman, and he is your most important offensive lineman, protecting the blind side of Sam Darnold. When he goes down with an injury and is out for the rest of the game, now obviously we know the rest of the season after this, that is going to absolutely mess with the outcome of the game. That if there is one reason the Vikings lost, which I don't think that there is only one reason the Vikings lost to the Rams, but if you want to point fingers at just one reason, point your finger at Darrisaw getting hurt. Like that play was the reason the Vikings lost that game. If you're gonna just point out one play, not the missed face mask, they still had to go like 98 yards, like 105 from where Darnold was standing in the end zone. That, like, it was very unlikely that they were gonna be able to go down and score a touchdown off of that. Not impossible, but not very unlikely. If you wanna, like, beat good teams, don't put yourself in a position like that. Like, if you want to win that game, don't put yourself in that position to where a bad call, like, ruins a chance to tie the game. Like, look at what they did against the 49ers in week 2. Like, they got out to a massive lead and then didn't have to worry at the end of the game about, oh, is a missed call going to screw us over here at the end of the game? It's like, it didn't matter. They could have had that exact same missed face mask call in the San Francisco game, and nobody would be talking about it as much as they are now. So that missed face mask call, again, not the reason the Vikings lost that game. For me, again, there was 4 reasons. One of them was the Darrisaw injury. Second one, the absolutely absurd amount of pre-snap penalties that the Vikings had, and many, if not all of them, were actual penalties and not just, oh, the refs are out here looking for. They were actual penalties. And like that is just so, like, disappointing and, like, momentum stopping when, if you're a receiver and you're not on the line of scrimmage, all you need to do is look over at the ref, hold up a thumb, and he will either hold it up or down, and you can adjust your position. The ref will tell them if they are good or not. And there was there was multiple illegal formation penalties on receivers, and that should never happen in the NFL. So yeah, the pre-snap penalties were absolutely atrocious. That is something that KOC should be working on this week, before this Colts game on Sunday. Then the other two things is, one, they just got 2 very, very good receivers back just in time for that game with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. The two of them combined for 13 receptions, 157 yards, and a touchdown. Like that is going to be that's just hard to stop. So the two of them together are tough to stop, but also the defense did break down again in the middle of um the field. Um and again left the secondary out to dry, and they were just dumping passes off and able to pick up a ton because the receivers were, or the cornerbacks were deeper, and so they were able to pick up 10, 15, 20 yards on a play and just keep chunking away at yardage that way. But again, those two receivers, even if you are guarding them very closely, they're gonna still have games like that. I also want to say, if you think that Blake Cashman not being in again was the sole reason that they lost that game, first of all, that dude should be in the Hall of Fame immediately. Like he should be actively playing and in the Hall of Fame. So, then the last and final reason I have that the Vikings didn't win that game is the Rams were just able to stop their run game. Like the Vikings couldn't get a run game going with Aaron Jones, and that was the I think it was the first time all year he that in game in take out the game he got hurt in. Um, so take that Jets game out. Take that game out of it, and that was the only game I'm pretty sure that was the one of, if not the only game where he didn't put up at least 90 yards, 90 rushing yards in a game. So I just they for this offense to work with how good it is, for it to work, they need a run game that is as good as their passing game. And Aaron Jones does that, but you got to get Aaron Jones going. All right, so now let's look ahead to this Colts Vikings game. It was flexed from a noon game to Sunday Night Football. The devastating news here for Vikings fans coming out of Indianapolis is that Joe Flacco will be starting over Anthony Richardson. I put more like Anthony Richardson is more mobile than Joe Flacco is. Joe Flacco is almost 40 years old, and he can't really move that well, but he can read a defense a lot better than Anthony Richardson can at this point. So I think Joe Flacco gives the Colts a far better chance to win this game than Anthony Richardson does. So that is a reason that I think that that gives the Colts a better chance to beat the Vikings. But on the other hand, Kevin O'Connell was reported as saying, I think TJ, meaning TJ Hawkinson, I think TJ is ready to play as good as he has really looked since we've gotten him here. And that's saying something considering the impact he made right away in 22 and then the season he was having last year at the time he got hurt. So TJ Hawkinson, to offset the Joe Flacco starting over Anthony Richardson, TJ Hawkinson looks like he is playing this Sunday. So expect him to be targeted, expect him to help block on that offensive line now that Darisaw is down for the year and maybe even into next year. But they did help. They did get a left tackle replacement. The Vikings acquired Jaguars left tackle Cam Robinson and a conditional 2026 seventh round pick for a 2026 fifth round pick that could move to a 2026 fourth based off of his Cam Robinson's playing time. So the condition on both picks, the seventh round coming to Minnesota and the fourth going to Jackson, or the 5th going to Jacksonville, is both based off of Cam Robinson's playing time. The 7th could disappear depending on how much he plays, and the 5th could move to a 4th depending on how much he plays. And from what I have heard, there is very little chance that does not move to a 4th round pick. So that is likely to move to a 4th round pick in 2026. So that's a little bit of good news there. Let's go over some team rankings here. Offense, defense, and will the thrill. Yards per game for the offense is sitting at 325 even. That is good for 19th in the entire NFL. Points per game is sitting at 26.9, and that is 7th in the entire NFL. Third down, they are converting at a 39.5% rate, and that is 14th in the entire NFL, so that is right kind of smack dab in the middle of the pack. The defense is giving up 346.9 yards per game. That is 18th in the entire NFL. Points per game is 19.6 points per game against. That is how much the defense is letting up. That's 9th in the entire NFL. Third down is they're giving up third downs 33% of the time. The other team is converting on third down 33% of the time. They are 61 for 91 on stopping third down. The Vikings defense is that's tied for 9th in the entire NFL. Fourth down, the opponents are converting at a 1/3 rate, 33.3%. Other teams are 5 for 15, and that is tied for 2nd in the entire NFL. Field goals or special teams percentages haven't changed yet. Will DeThurl is still yet to miss one. He is 14 for 14 on field goals. He is tied with Detroit and Tennessee as the only teams left at 100% on field goals. His long is still the week 3 kick against the Texans at 58 yards. That is still tied for 6th. And PATs, again, still at 100%. He is 20 for 20 now. So let's move on to our Nordic Report predictions. We did have 3 come off the board here in the last week. Start with the incorrect here. I said the Vikings would go exactly 1-1 against the Lions and the Rams. That is incorrect. They went 0-2. I said I doubled down on that last week by saying the Vikings will beat the Rams by 9+ points. They lost by 9+ points, so that is another incorrect prediction there. But then I did redeem myself a little bit here and went 1 for 3 of the 3 that came off the board this week. And I said Justin Jefferson will lead both teams in receiving yards in the Thursday night game against the Rams. And he did by, I think it was like 9 yards. He beat Puka Nacua by. But nonetheless, that is a correct prediction. So that brings our Nordic Report totals to a 2 for 5 on the year. So 40%. 40% clip here for me. So the 3 predictions I have for the Vikings this week are they will just straight up beat the Colts by any score. The Vikings will win. Dallas Turner will register a sack this week. And it will be a full sack, not a half sack. And I also want it to be if he this does not count if he registers 2 half sacks. He will get at least 1 full sack by himself. And then last prediction is that Justin Jefferson will have 2 touchdowns and 100+ receiving yards this week against the Colts. So now moving on to the Wolves' Den here, where The Timberwolves went 2-1 in the last week. They improved their record to a 500 record at 2-2. They had wins over Sacramento in the second game, and in the home opener against the Raptors, they beat Sacramento 117 to 115, and they beat the Raptors 112 to 101. Leading scorer in both of those two games was Julius Randle. And then the Mavericks came to town in a rematch of last year's Western Conference Finals matchup and absolutely took control of the game and just curb stomped the Timberwolves after the first quarter. First quarter, Anthony Edwards put up 24 points by himself. But after that, it was the Luka and Kyrie show, and mostly just the Luka show at that point. And I think there's something about him playing in the state of Minnesota where he turns into some sort of different animal, which he is already a great basketball player anyway. So I don't know how it's possible, but he somehow steps up his game when he comes to Minnesota. He must get the colder drinking water up here, the colder weather coursing through his veins, and just something happens where he uh just turns into some other animal here. The Timberwolves are second in the Northwest Division. They're ninth in the Western Conference. Again, Wolves are only 4 games in. There's no need to panic right now. It took a while for Cat and Rudy to start playing well together. So I think that these guys are just getting the chemistry down, and I really hope that they can stay healthy all year, unlike the first year Rudy was here where Cat was hurt for half the season. And then they just couldn't gel well together that season. But then when they did get extended amount of playing time together last year, it worked extremely well. So I think that is what this is, because last year they got off to I think it was 1-2 start. Last year they lost 2 of their first 3 games, and I just think that they are still looking for that game where they just turn it all on, and I think it's going to come up here pretty quickly. If we are looking ahead at their 3 games this next week before next week's 301 show episode, they play tomorrow. If you're as of I'm recording this on a Thursday. They play Friday, November 1st at home against Jokic and the Nuggets. So that could very well be the big game that they have that does turn the season around. It's a massive matchup there. That again, another rematch from last year's playoff run. Then the next day on Saturday, the 2nd, they are in San Antonio before they have an off day coming back home, and then they will play against the Charlotte Hornets at home on Monday the 4th. So again, they do have some big tests here, where I do think their biggest test is the Denver Nuggets, and then the games get easier. The next 3 games, they get easier as they go along. I think we can all agree that the Nuggets are the best team of the 3 they play, even though they haven't gotten off to a great start yet this year. They are still the best team they play of the 3. Then the Spurs with Wemby are the second best team of those 3, and then the Charlotte Hornets are last. So hopefully, I would call it a successful week if they went 2-1 in those 3 games, or better. 2-1 or 3-0 is a successful week. The a 1-2 is depending on who it's to, who the losses are to. It's just kind of meh. 0-3 is a disaster of a week. Not a season ender, but just not a great week individually. So let's go over some team rankings here on the individual statistics. Their points for per game are at 111.5, which is 21st out of the 30 NBA teams. Their field goal percentage is 46.5%, which is 12th in the entire league. This next one is a massive step up from last year. They are shooting 39.5% from three, which is 4th in the entire NBA, which I will say, I feel like they're also just chucking up more threes. So to be shooting more threes while also making them at a higher percentage is always a good thing. Where they're struggling is free throws. They are tied for 19th in free throws at 75%. So comparatively, that should be their easiest shot, which they are making it at the highest percentage, but they are struggling a little bit with free throws. Rebounds per game, they are tied for 18th, and that is 43 rebounds per game. And where their number one struggle, and I don't know how big of a nitpick you want to get here of it does matter, but it doesn't matter as much as some of these other ones were blocks. They are tied for 27th in the entire NBA in blocks with 3.3 per game. And there's only one team below them. So they are tied with a couple teams, and there's only one team that is worse than them in the entire NBA. The turnover differential, they are actually tied for third for best turnover differential per game, and they are plus 4.7. So they are causing 4.7 more turnovers per game than giving up. As for the defense, they are points against per game is 115.5. That is tied for 13th. So, or excuse me, 111.5. So their points for per game and points against per game are exactly the same. The field goal percentage against is 46.1%, and that is 19th in the entire NBA. Field goal percentage against from three is 33.1, and that is 7th in the entire NBA. So they are really good. Their perimeter defense is really good, but they need to work on their blocking shots and their in down low, in tight defense. So that is just something to note there. Their rebounds against per game is 42.5. That is 9th in the entire NBA. And their blocks against per game is 4, and that is tied for 4th in the entire NBA. So that's just a little snapshot of how the first 4 games have gone for the Timberwolves this year. Definitely some very good things, and also definitely some room for improvement. And I don't know how much of that is just team chemistry of they need to just play some more games together and get more comfortable with each other. So we will see how that completely unfolds here the rest of this season. As for the predictions for the Timberwolves this year, or this week, we had 2 come off the board, and both of them were correct. I said the Wolves would win 2 of their next 3, and they would win their home opener. They did win 2 of the 3 games this past week, and they won one of those 2 wins was the home opener. So, with both of those being correct, that brings my percentage total stats for the year, for the season since we started this, to a 2 for 5, and that is 40%. So both the Timberwolves and the Vikings, not just the Timberwolves, the Wolves Den and the Nordic Report are both sitting at 2 for 5 for 40%. Obviously, none have come off the board for the Target Field Talkers. All right, so for this week's predictions for the Wolves' Den is Ant will drop 40 plus points by next week's episode. The Wolves will beat the Nuggets by at least 10 points. And the Wolves will make the playoffs. They will match up with the Mavericks at some point, and the Wolves will win the series. So the Wolves will beat the Mavericks in the playoffs this year. And finally, moving over to the Rinkside rundown here. At the Wild's last week, they played 3 games. They did go 2-1-0 in those 3 games. Their first regulation loss of the year. They started these last 3 games of the road trip in Tampa Bay with a 4-2 win. Marc-Andre Fleury let in 2 goals. He did stop 24 of 26 shots and had a .923 save percentage in that game. Matt Boldy in 17 minutes and 2 seconds put up 1 goal, 1 assist for 2 points. And Kirill the Thrill in 28 minutes and 8 seconds, he put up 2 goals, 1 assist for 3 points on the night. So absolute stud there in Kaprizov. Then on Saturday, they went to Philadelphia and got their butts kicked. In all honesty, they did not look good on Saturday. They had bits and pieces where they did look pretty good. They had a couple players that looked pretty good, but overall as a team for the entire game, that was not a good showing. They lost 7-5. Gus struggled for the first time this season. He only stopped 16 shots. There were only 22 against him. He let in 6 goals. There was an empty netter at the end, but he had a .727 save percentage. And again, just did not look that good. The one player that actually did look pretty good that game was Marcus Foligno, aka Moose. He did score 2 goals on 3 shots, and he racked up 3 hits during that game. So again, he actually played pretty well against the Flyers in Philadelphia. So good for Moose there. It's nice to see him pop off every once in a while. And then they finished the road trip by traveling to the other side of Pennsylvania, and they went to play the Penguins in Pittsburgh. They won that game 5-3 after Marc-Andre Fleury led in the first 2 goals of the game. They very much settled down after that. He ended up stopping 26 of 29 shots, 3 goals against the entire game, and .897 save percentage. What was big about this game, I'm sure many of you know this, that was was his last time playing in the town that drafted him, in Pittsburgh. Again, there's technically is 2 ways that he could, technically 3 ways he could play in Pittsburgh again. 2 of them would involve a trade. The first way is you trade him to a team that plays Pittsburgh later this year. Or the second way to trade him is to trade him to Pittsburgh. Then the last way that he could play in Pittsburgh still is if both teams met in the Stanley Cup Finals. But the Penguins don't look like they're a Stanley Cup contender team right now. And at the core of it, I'm not sure the Wild are either. To me, they look a little bit more like the Vikings this year, where they're look like they're most likely a playoff team, but they're not a true championship contender. Again, I should say this, the Vikings are more likely to make the playoffs because they have less of a percentage of their season to go. Rounding out this Penguins game here, Kirill, again, another 3-point night. He had 1 goal and 2 assists. He did have 7 shots. And then Zuki, he had a goal on 4 shots. What the reason I bring up those two's shot totals specifically for this game is um the two of them are actually shooting the puck this year. Like, as funny and cool as it was to see every once in a while them passing it behind the net, then Kirill steps out on the short side and just snipes one above the goalie's shoulder. Like, shoot it. You can't score a goal without just shooting it. So that was absolutely driving me up a wall last year, is these two would rather play catch with the puck than try to put it behind the goalie that they were playing. So that was just my biggest gripe with the two of them last year. But this year, it seems like they both got like a talking to from John Hines, or maybe Bill Guerin would talk to him or something like that. This either this preseason training camp or maybe this offseason they sat down and talked about it. But they are clearly got told by somebody, you guys got to shoot. You guys are good players. You have to shoot more, and it's paying off for both of them. Kirill, I think, at least after the Pittsburgh game, he was tied for first with Mark Stone in the entire NHL in points, and I think he's dropped down to like 3 or 4 or something like that now, because other guys have played over the last couple days. But he is up there in points this year, and it's because he is still passing, but him shooting, I think, gives him more confidence, and is willing to make the play to shoot, but also then make a better play to pass if the pass is actually there. I feel like him shooting more makes him put on like the better opportunity tinted glasses, where he will look for the best opportunity possible while also knowing that he might just have the best opportunity. Um, and then lastly, I do want to shout out Freddie Gaudreau for that Penguins game. He did have 2 goals and 1 assist on 4 shots. Um, so he played the game of best game of his year thus far, um, against Pittsburgh or against the Penguins in Pittsburgh. So that was great to see their all around performance. They didn't get down after allowing the first 2 goals, and it was cool to see uh, how much love the Penguins fans actually still have for Marc-Andre Fleury. There were multiple times throughout the game while the play was actually still going on where you could hear, you could obviously hear Ryan Carter and Anthony LaPanta talking in the booth, doing the play-by-play and the color commentary. But then you heard the microphones around the ice sheet picking up the crowd chanting Fleury, Fleury, Fleury. Like they were into it, and they were excited to see their uh, one of their all-time great players, all-time great goaltenders, maybe the greatest goaltender in Penguins history, um, playing his last game in Pittsburgh. He spent his first 13 years of his career in Pittsburgh. Like he's he has spent, I think this is his third full season in Minnesota. He got traded at the deadline, so it's technically his 4th season, but this is his 3rd full season. So if we include just the full seasons, he spent over 4 times as long in Pittsburgh as he has in Minnesota. So that place, and I think he said it in his post game interview, with the Penguins in stadium, like they're I forget what her name is. It's their version of Kevin Gorg, basically, and he basically told her, this is a second home for me, and you can definitely see why. They love him. He loves, Pittsburgh loves him. He loves Pittsburgh. It's a very mutual feeling, clearly for Fleury and the people of Pittsburgh. All right. So now let's move on to let's look ahead to this upcoming week's schedule. Starting again tomorrow on Friday, November 1st, they play their first home game, or their third home game of the year, their first since the second game of the year. They are finally back home. They are hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then on Sunday the 3rd, November 3rd, they take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then on Tuesday the 5th, Kevin Fiala returns and they host the Los Angeles Kings. So you got 3 games coming up here. Again, 3 against 3 pretty good teams. And again, it'll be a great test here. And I really think this Wild team, after seeing them play, and I know I said at the beginning, first episode or two of this podcast, I didn't think the Wild were going to be that good this year. I really didn't. I truly believe that this offseason. And again, we have a lot of season left to go, but after seeing them play their first 9 games of the year, they've almost fully convinced me to change my opinion of them. So they are I am a lot higher on this team than I was. But again, I don't know if I can call them a true championship contender just yet. But I did like seeing, I will say that I forgot to say this earlier this episode, but I did like seeing them lose in regulation. I actually liked seeing that. Because I wanted to see them get punched in the face, and I wanted to see how they would respond to that. And they responded well. Not in the first, 10, 15 minutes of the first period, but in the overall game itself, they responded well. So I like seeing, my favorite teams overcome some adversity. And the Wild have done that so far. They haven't had a ton of adversity to overcome yet, but in the little bits that they have overcome that. So it's some good signs here for the Minnesota Wild and the state of hockey. So let's go over some team rankings, and then we can go over some Gus Bus goaltending rankings, because a lot of this episode was about Fleury, but Gus Bus is the starting goaltender of the Minnesota Wild right now. And we will go over some of his statistics in just a second after we go over some team statistics here. So their record, they are 6-1-2. They have 14 points. They are points wise, they are tied for third in the central, or tied for second in the Central Division with the Dallas Stars. The Stars do have the tiebreaker over the Wild right now. They are also 4th in the Western Conference, in the entire Western Conference. And I know the standings, the playoff standings don't go just 1 to 8, but that is a very good thing for potential wild card standings. Is there's only one team in the Pacific Division that is better than the Wild are right now, and that is the Vegas Golden Knights, who have been good in the first 6-7 years of their existence. They've been a really good team. I mean, they've been a team for 7 years, and they've already won a Stanley Cup. They've been to 2. So that's a very, very good sign here for the Wild early. Their goals for per game, they are sitting at 3.78. That is 9th in the entire NHL. Goals against per game, Flower and Gus Bus have combined for 2.56 goals against per game, and that is 5th in the entire NHL. Their power play is cooking at a 25.8% rate. That is 7th in the entire NHL. And here is where we hit a rough patch. Their penalty kill is sitting at 70.6%. So teams are converting at nearly 30% on the when the Wild are on the penalty kill. That is tied for 27th out of 32 teams in the NHL. So that is pretty glaringly the area they need to improve the most is the penalty kill. Which, it is great to say that they only have really one place to improve, but that is awful. Like, that needs to be improved a lot before the end of this season. So if they actually want to be competitive and like go deep in the play, not just make the playoffs, but go deep in the playoffs, that is one thing they absolutely need to fix. You're not gonna make a deep playoff run winning games, 6-5, 7-4. Like, you're not just gonna obviously you're gonna have to outscore them, but you're not gonna win by offense alone. So if the penalty kill was even just average in the league, I'm wondering if they could be, maybe 8-0-1 right now if their penalty kill wasn't as atrocious as it is. They very well could be competing with Winnipeg. Like, they could have been they could have had a longer just unbeaten streak than Winnipeg did to start this year if their penalty kill wasn't that bad. But alas, it is that bad, so they don't. So that is, if I'm John Hines, that is, and maybe even Bill Guerin if it takes a trade to make it better. But John Hines and Bill Guerin need to sit down and discuss how to make the penalty kill better. Is it a trade, or is it just a, hey, we want player X instead of player Y on the penalty kill. We think player Y is a better penalty killer, so put player Y on the penalty kill 1, and then player X on penalty kill 2. And that a simple change like that might be enough to fix this. But that's something the coaching staff and Bill Guerin really needs to look at going forward here, and hopefully they can figure out what is wrong with it and fix it. Gus Bus, on the other hand, absolute beauty. Gus Bus is an absolute beauty. He's an absolute stud. I will say, I do think I am probably the reason he is playing this well, because I called for him to be traded before the season started. So if that's what it takes for Gus to play at this level, I think Gustafsson should be traded. Again, if that will make him continue to play this well, I will always say that. His record on the year is 4-1-1. That is tied for third for best goaltender record in the NHL. His save percentage is .922%. That is ninth in the entire NHL. His goals against average, 2.17. That is eighth in the entire NHL. So he is a top 10, borderline top 5 goalie to start this season. That's amazing. Like, obviously he's had one bad game this entire year, and that was the game in Philadelphia. And every other game he has played, he has looked good, either good or absolutely outstanding. Some of these games, the Wild should have lost, but they didn't, because Gustafsson bailed them out with some massive saves. So Gustafsson is a massive reason why they have won and are continuing to win. So now we will move over to the predictions here, where we had the most predictions come off for a segment all year. We had 4 predictions come off for the Rinkside Report for this episode. And we had one prediction come off from the first episode that we started doing these predictions here at the 301 show. That was episode 3. So we had one back in episode 3 come off the board. That one was the wild goalies. One of the wild goalies would have at least one shutout in the month of October. That one was incorrect. Then I absolutely jinxed us, so I do apologize. My next prediction that is incorrect here is the Wild will break the non-trailing record set by the 69-70 Boston Bruins. And I predicted that, and a couple hours later, they were trailing. So I do apologize for that. That was a jinx by me. So those are the two I got incorrect. I also said the Wild will win at least 2 games before the next episode came out. They did do that. They went 2-1. They won 2 games. And then I also said Kirill Kaprizov will have at least 3 points in one game before this week's episode. He actually did it in 2 games. So that was also correct. So thank you, Kirill Kaprizov, and thank you, Minnesota Wild as a team, for getting me 2 more correct points. For the Wild so far, this has been my best team. The Rinkside Rundown has been my best segment so far. I am 4 for 7 on predictions. I have 4 correct out of 7 total predictions that have come off the board so far. That is sitting at 57% for the Rinkside Rundown. Total between all 4 segments, really 3 segments, because again, we don't have any off the board for the Twins. But total, I have 8 correct predictions. I've had 17 come off the board, and I am sitting at a 47% clip. So I'm trying to get this back up to 50, but also I don't want to just like not do anything with it, you know? Like I want to be still predicting enough to do something here. So let's do these Wild predictions here. So my first prediction is that the Wild will make the playoffs as one of the 3 divisional teams out of the Central Division. That is my first prediction. My second prediction is that by next week's episode, Kirill Kaprizov will score a hat trick. I have 3 goals in 1 game. And then another year, a full year length prediction is that Marc-Andre Fleury will score a goal this year. The Wild will have 2 goalies that have scored a goal. So Marc-Andre Fleury will also score a goal this year. All right. Again, thank you for joining us here today for another week of the 301 show. And again, if you guys want to hear anything specifically, if you want me to talk more about a certain team or have a segment to pitch or something, leave it down in the comment section and I will see what I can do about either making that segment happen or talking more about a specific team. So yeah, again, thanks for joining. We will see you next week. Peace.